The 2022 NFL season is going to be amazing. I mean, on the face of it, it looks like it could be one of the most amazing seasons as far as storylines, competition, and exciting games that we've ever seen. It's not hyperbole. You look at the AFC, and in my 42 years of watching NFL football, I don't remember a conference this stacked. On paper, of course. There's 13 teams. Discount the Jags, discount the Texans, Jets too. I mean, all three had good drafts, and they look like they're on the rise. But you got to kind of put them aside for odds of making the playoffs and doing something special. But there's 13 other teams that have fan bases that believe their team is going to go to the playoffs and do damage. And I think it's realistic. What makes it even more exciting is a bunch of these teams have short windows for those builds of those teams to make hay and have success before they have to rebuild. And you never know when you go to another build how it's going to play out. So a lot of teams are desperate. Bills, Dolphins, Browns, among many other teams. Now, we get Matt Ryan moving from the NFC to the AFC to the Indianapolis Colts. And that's what I want to cover here. I always say I love comments. I did a video, I believe it was analytics on Josh Allen, and somebody said, yo, man, what about Matt Ryan going to the Colts? This is a big deal. I thought about it. I think he even said you should do a podcast on the analytics of Matt Ryan and going to the Colts. I said, bro, that's a good idea. I'm going to do one. I started doing the studies, and it was really, really a great learn. And there's a little tidbit of information that I found in there that I think is really exciting that could be a nice rabbit hole. So, brother, I forgot your name. I'm sorry. I went looking for it, went fishing, but there's so many comments. I just couldn't find it. So, please, if you watch the video, say that's me. I'll pin you at the top and give you the credit you deserve. So, I did a journey, analytics of Matt Ryan going to the Colts. And I think AFC teams, 12 teams, there's 13 teams that are potential to go to playoffs, but the Colts should be happy. But the rest of the teams, 12 other teams, should be a little nervous. And when I get done with the analytics, you're going to see that Matt Ryan really has high potential to turn the Indianapolis Colts into a possible big threat for the AFC. Now, he's older quarterback. And I learned this year, it sucks, but I learned that when you get older, sometimes years become like dog years as far as your body breaking down. 49, I was awesome. I mean, I was fantastic shape. But the last year, I've had so many problems. I broke my foot and went downhill like you wouldn't believe. It's mind-blowing. So everything that I'm going to say here has the caveat of, will Matt Ryan do a dog year as far as age? But if not, and you look at what he's done, I could go back a couple of years, but I'm just going to deal with the 2021 season with the Falcons. You give him the Colts, this guy is moving from a Winnebago to a Maserati, and he could drive it to the finish line. This is how, this analytics are playing out. So anyway, let's get into it. On the face, Colts 9-8. Falcons 7-10, 2-win difference. But when we dig into the stats, you're going to see something very, very interesting. Now, the Colts were a good team. Not great, or else they would have made the playoffs. But when you really look at them, they were held back by Wentz. And not because he sucks, but there's just key elements of his game that held the Colts back. And the style of quarterback they needed, he did not fit. Now, offensively, I'm going to do a lot of graphics. Here's the graphic. Time of possession, they were 4th. Yards per game, 16th. Rush yards, 1st. Yards before contact, 6th. Rush yards per game, per rush, 5.1. Points per game, 9th. But the problem was, pass yards per game, they were 26th. Completion percentage, only 62%. Back in my day when I started watching football, Dan Marino was like 63, 64%, and that was amazing. 62% is very, very poor in the modern NFL, unless you have some other stuff wrapping around it. So defensively, when you look at them, pass yards, they were 14th in least amount. Rush yards, 23rd. Points allowed, 9th best. Ints, 11th best. Downside, sacks, 25th worst. Hurries, last in the league. So when you look at this team, they've got a lot of offensive potential. You look at the games, the ones they won and lost, they were almost all shootouts, and there was a score here, score there. That was the difference for the most part. Their defense is an opportunistic defense that's pretty good in pass coverage. They need to learn to stop the run better. They need to get after the quarterback. But they're good enough to make something happen in a big game, close game, in a shootout. They just needed a quarterback to take them over the top. Now, I'm going to spoil some stat here. Wentz had 0 fourth-quarter comebacks or game-winning drives. And when you pair that with the 62%, you start to see where Wentz was a problem. Get into it a little deeper. But more importantly, how Ryan is going to be a huge impact, a positive impact for the Colts. Now, Falcons quickly, and the run game is what I want to focus on, and there's a reason for that statistically. I'll get into that in a second. Yards before contact, the Falcons were 29th, and they were 31st in the league with rush yards. They had 3.7 per rush. Colts, 5.1, 1.4 yards difference. 1,000 yards more on the ground. Why is this important? Because both teams were big play-action teams. Okay? And, you'll say, well, there's a big thing. That run game doesn't affect the play action. We'll get into that. So Ryan, on the face of it, 20 and 13. 20 touchdowns, 13 picks. Wentz, 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. Now, Wentz did a lot as far as scoring. But that underbelly of consistency, the big play, the ability to make the big things happen wasn't there. And on the other side, remember, Ryan lost Ridley, no run game, poor offensive line, iffy defense. Pitt's coming in as a rookie. This was a new system. This guy had everything around him to make him look poorly. And you could easily say that. But when you dig again into the analytics, there's anomalies that show that this guy isn't finished. Again, he could age like a dog. That will change everything. But this guy had a pretty good season considering the context and framework. All right, so I'm going to do a comparison here between Ryan and Wentz. Completion percentage, Ryan had 67, Wentz 62. Intended air yards, 7.1 and 7.7 for Wentz. Pass rush percentage, Ryan was 4th most pressure in the league at 27.9%, and Wentz not too far behind at 10th at 25.8%. Play action passes, Falcons were 6th with most attempts and 8th in production. The Colts, on the other hand, were 4th and 4th. So when you take this group of stats, immediately you see both teams were high play action teams. Colts, they were balanced as far as attempts and production, quantity and quality. The Falcons had a lot of quantity, but not so much quality. Tended air yards, 0.6 difference. You could say, oh, Ryan's arm is weak. It's only 7.1. He can't. Mahomes was 7.3. So you can't really go with that. Now, pressure percentage. He was 0.6 less as far as depth of average play, but still suffered vastly more pressure. 1 out of every 3 passes was under pressure. And it was short stuff. That means that line was Finlandia Swiss cheese. Okay? So he's going to go to a better offensive line, a better running attack, and it's going to open things up. The bottom line is he's not going to be the sauce that runs the whole thing. He's going to be the spice inside of it. So let's get into another set of stats here. bad percentage throws. Ryan was 29th best with only 14.5%. Wentz, on the other hand, was 7th worst at 18.8%. Tight window throws, 16.3 for Ryan at 15th, 16.5 for Wentz at 12th. On target, Ryan, 9th best, 78.1. Wentz, 26th worst, 73.7. Time before pressure, 2.4 and 2.5. All right, so the time before pressure is 1/10 of a second. That's forever for a quarterback in the NFL. Big time. Wentz was like top 10, tied like, 4th to 10th or something. And Ryan was like 12th to 22nd or something. So Ryan had more pressure, and we'll dig into how it was even more pressure than that. But even while the tight windows were similar, the throws by Ryan, far less bad throw percentage and much better on target percentage. 5% over the 300 and plus throws is a big deal. And Ryan had 4,000 yards despite throwing shorter, and Wentz had 3,500 despite throwing farther. And a lot of that was the consistency that Ryan can bring. There's so many other things besides this. The veteran savviness, the experience, all that stuff. But just the composure, the ability to process information and to deliver not just an accurate ball, but ball with good location. Okay? So this last bit, I'm going to do this last graphic, is going to really drive it home why Ryan is just going to be a much bigger piece to the puzzle than Wentz could ever dream of. Okay. Ryan had 40 sacks, 32 for Wentz. Completion over expected percentage, 0.9 for Ryan, which was 10th, and minus 2.3, which was 26 for Wentz. Game-winning or fourth quarter comeback games. 4 for Ryan, 0 for Wentz. All right, so Ryan was getting hit a lot. Older guy getting hit a lot. More pressure. 1 out of every 3 throws being under pressure despite short passes. And his over-completion percentage was 0.9. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it was 10th. And again, when you're talking about hundreds of passes, this is a big deal. Now, that rabbit trail I mentioned earlier, this is what came up. I was checking tight window throws of Ryan this year and last year. And ironically enough, he was 0.9 last year and the year before. But in 2020, 0.9 had him 20th. And in 21, it was 10th. My curiosity is this, I've been wondering this for a while, seeing the running games boost. Is the cycle of talent and understanding in the staff growing so that this pass attack that's been flourishing for 15 plus years, has it been slowed? Is it being mitigated by the talent going into the secondary and the staff figuring ways to mitigate it? I'm going to do a bigger study on it, but when you look, the over-completion expected percentage dramatically dropped from 2020 to 2021. I don't know. I got to do a big study on it, but it's interesting. I do feel anecdotally that it is, but bigger study on that. But the bottom line is Ryan is consistent. A team that can run the ball like nobody's business and has a decent defense, but opportunistic defense that needs a quarterback to drive home some victories and be the stabilizing force. Ryan is a perfect fit. Remember, Falcons sucked. They only had 7 wins. 4 of them came from Ryan driving down the field and going ahead for the victory or putting themselves in position for the win. So 60% of the wins Falcons had were attributed to Ryan's leadership. If the Colts could have got 1, they'd have made the playoffs. 2, 3, 4, what would they have been? They've been playing home games. Big difference. When you look at key stats, I'm going to put this graphic, this last graphic up to show the difference. Look at this. 5% more completion percentage. You're talking pressure rating was vastly different. 1 out of the 3 compared to 1 out of 4 throws. Bad throw percentage was 5% more, 4.3. On target percentage was 4.4. And over completion percentage, when you factor it all in, was 3.1%. And then the 4 game-winning drives to 0. If you took this framework and just added that to Wentz, Colts would have had 13, 14 wins. And they would have been a very, very difficult team to beat because that running game is so portable. That's the dangerous portion, dangerous part about the Colts. The run game can go to Buffalo, it can go to New England, it can go to Kansas City and still be good. You add a quarterback that's able to make the smart throws, that's able to process information. The Colts are a very dangerous team to a lot of these top-end teams that have expectations to do big stuff. Anyway, this is Curtis saying thanks for staying to the end. Please like, comment, subscribe. Comments mean the most. Comments made this thing happen. Catch you next time. Be well. Bookies can earn hundreds to thousands of dollars from booking action with aceperhead.com.